If you find yourself in Japan during Christmas, you'll notice an interesting phenomenon. The entire country celebrates Christmas with trees and songs, yet the actual day of Christmas is not a holiday in Japan. Having lived in both Korea and Japan, I've observed that the Christmas atmosphere is more pronounced in Japan than in Korea. However, Korea observes it as a holiday, whereas Japan does not. Today's story is about why there are so few churches in Japan. Those who have traveled to Japan may have found it challenging to locate churches. It might seem like this scarcity is limited to certain areas, but it's a nationwide phenomenon. In fact, churches in Japan are so few and far between that they can be difficult to find. According to statistics on Christianity in Japan as of 2021, there are 7,468 churches serving approximately 537,000 believers. While these numbers might appear significant at first glance, they are quite small when put into context. Given Japan's population of about 120 million, Christian believers constitute less than 0.5% of the total population. This makes Japan one of the few countries with religious freedom where Christianity remains relatively minor, especially when compared to its global presence. Despite its status as one of the world's major religions, Christianity remains a minority faith in Japan. Globally, approximately 1 in 4 individuals identifies as Christian. However, in Japan, the ratio is closer to 1 in 200. What factors contribute to the relatively small number of Christian believers in Japan? Could the timing of Christianity's introduction to Japan play a role in this phenomenon? Well, in fact, the Christian mission in Japan commenced 475 years ago, in 1549, which is notably 70 years earlier than in the United States, home to today's largest Christian population. Despite its early inception, Christianity struggled to spread in Japan, largely due to severe persecution. Francis Xavier, a Jesuit missionary, arrived in Kagoshima, Japan on August 15, 1549, enticed by reports that Japan, devoid of Muslims and Jews, presented a fertile ground for missionary efforts. Xavier reportedly spent entire days on his feet, busy administering the sacrament of baptism, initially suggesting a successful introduction of Christianity in Japan. However, this initial acceptance was short-lived. The real motivation for the daimyos, including Toyotomi Hideyoshi, to welcome the Roman Catholic missionaries was not spiritual affinity, but rather an interest in the Western knowledge and technology that the missionaries could facilitate access to, especially firearms. The situation took a dramatic turn in 1587 when Toyotomi Hideyoshi, during his return from the conquest of Kyushu, suddenly banned Christianity. This marked the onset of a swift decline for the Catholic Church in Japan. Several theories attempt to clarify why Toyotomi made such a sudden decision. The most compelling suggests he feared that daimyos, by engaging in trade with Western nations, could become overly powerful, thus challenging his dominion. Christianity was seen as the catalyst for this burgeoning power. Toyotomi forced Catholic priests out of Japan, leading to widespread persecution that peaked with the martyrdom of the 26 saints of Japan, triggered by the San Felipe incident. On October 19, 1596, a Spanish trading ship, severely damaged by a typhoon while en route from Manila to Mexico, drifted onto the coasts of Japan. The ship was carrying Franciscan, Dominican, and Augustinian priests and friars. Upon receiving this news, Toyotomi confiscated the ship's cargo and detained the missionaries. Compounding the situation, one sailor disclosed to Hideyoshi that Spain's strategy involved first sending missionaries to convert the locals, followed by military forces to colonize the country. This revelation deepened Hideyoshi's suspicions, leading him to besiege the Kyoto monastery on December 7th, apprehend members of the Franciscan order on December 8th, and detain associates of the Franciscans on December 9th. By January 1, 1597, 4 Christians and 3 Jesuits, totaling 24 individuals, were escorted from Osaka to Kyoto. Toyotomi commanded the mutilation of these 24 Christians, severing their ears and noses, and subjected them to public humiliation by parading them through Kyoto's streets. They were then taken to Nagasaki, where they were crucified. Following this decree, the 24 mutilated Christians were forced to walk 850 kilometers from Kyoto to Nagasaki. En route, 2 individuals attempting to assist the persecuted Christians were interrogated by a guard. Upon admitting their faith, they were immediately detained, increasing the count to 26. Consequently, on February 5, 1597, at noon, on Nagasaki's Nishizaka Hill, 26 Catholic Christians, 20 Japanese and 6 foreigners, were executed by crucifixion. As time progressed, Toyotomi Hideyoshi passed away, and Tokugawa Ieyasu rose to power, initiating an official persecution of Christianity. Similar to Toyotomi, Tokugawa's efforts to suppress Christianity were driven by concerns over cultural disintegration and the potential threat of invasion by Christian Western powers, along with the rapid territorial expansion by missionaries from Spain and Portugal. This marked the continuation of severe persecution against Christians in Japan, leading to thousands of deaths among the Christian community. Even 260 years after the conclusion of the Tokugawa regime, the suppression of Christianity persisted. The Japanese government upheld the divinity of the emperor, viewing Christianity as a potentially destabilizing influence. By 1945, relentless persecution had nearly erased Christianity from Japan, except for the hidden Christians, known as Kakure Kirishitan, who later became recognized as part of World Heritage. In 1859, as Japan opened its doors to trade with the U.S., Episcopal missionary Channing Moore Williams arrived, introducing Protestantism to the country. Yet, due to the long-standing history of persecution and ingrained fear, the Japanese populace remained wary of embracing Christianity, associating it with the threat of persecution and death. This apprehension led to Christians being marginalized within their communities and even disowned by their families, further tarnishing Christianity's reputation in Japan. Over time, Japanese society has moved away from persecuting or feeling animosity towards Christianity. However, its historical legacy lingers, leaving Christianity with limited influence in Japan today. The reasons for the Japanese populace's continued disinterest in Christianity, despite the absence of persecution, are multifaceted. While history certainly plays a role, it alone does not fully explain the situation. Fundamentally, Japan is a country where the majority of the population is irreligious, displaying a general indifference towards religion. Historically and culturally, Shintoism and Buddhism have exerted a strong influence, yet Japanese people often perceive these not as religions, but as aspects of culture that are seamlessly woven into their daily lives. In Japan, with a shrine present in virtually every city and town, visiting a shrine to pray is considered more a cultural ritual than a religious observance. The prevalent mindset in Japan enables individuals who follow a religion to hold a distinct perspective on religious beliefs, often characterized by a flexible sense of loyalty to any one religion. This flexibility facilitates the simultaneous embrace of multiple religious traditions. Unlike in many regions, it is relatively common in Japan for individuals to participate in the practices of both shrines and temples, reflecting a unique cultural openness to religious diversity. It is observed that a significant portion of the Japanese population engages in the practice of more than one religion concurrently. This phenomenon presents a challenge to the monotheistic doctrine of Christianity, potentially complicating its acceptance among Japanese individuals. According to a survey by Japan's Ministry of Education and Culture, there are more than 120 million followers of Shintoism and over 90 million adherents to Buddhism. Given that Japan's population is around 125 million, the combined total of Shinto and Buddhist followers exceeds the nation's total population. In Japan, a common saying reflects the country's unique approach to religion. At birth and for New Year's celebrations, individuals visit shrines, weddings are often conducted in churches, and funerals are held in temples. This saying highlights the syncretic nature of religious practices rather than merely serving as humor. Many prominent hotels in Japan feature small chapels to cater to the preference among young Japanese couples for Christian-style weddings, even among those who do not identify as Christians. This trend has encouraged the establishment of chapel spaces within hotels for commercial purposes, aiming to attract couples desiring a wedding in such a setting. Interestingly, there's also a preference for enrolling children in Christian-run mission schools or kindergartens. Parents, regardless of their own religious beliefs, often take part in their children's school ceremonies, which may include singing hymns. This participation can give the impression of a widespread embrace of Christianity, although surveys suggest that actual adherence to the faith is not common. The attraction to church weddings, chapel-equipped hotels, and Christian education institutions reflects a lifestyle preference rather than religious faith. Furthermore, the relatively low number of Christians in Japan can be partly attributed to the cultural norm of avoiding outright refusal or rejection. The Japanese culture emphasizes harmony and avoiding direct confrontation, making it challenging for individuals to express disagreement or reject offers outright. This reluctance can complicate clear communication with foreigners and create a barrier to proposing new ideas or changes, including religious conversion. The openness required to share one's faith and evangelize in Christianity clashes with the fear of rejection, making it difficult for the religion to gain a wider foothold. In essence, historical factors such as centuries of Christian persecution, a cultural inclination towards embracing multiple religious practices without exclusivity, and the societal norm of avoiding direct refusal collectively contribute to the modest number of Christian adherents in Japan. So, that concludes today's video. The reason behind the small number of churches in Japan. Thank you for watching.